Tonight is a really fun slate for daily fantasy baseball because I think we can have our cake and eat it too. There are some really good high-salaried pitchers, including Shohei Ohtani on tonight's slate, and there's also a game at Coors Field. But there is a very simple path to using both those options, and sure, they'll be popular, but you know, guys just want to have fun sometimes. And I think that we can make that happen on tonight's slate. It is a delight to break down. We're going to do that for today, discuss which high salary pitchers to prioritize, how we can jam in Coors Field without breaking the bank, and much more to get you ready for Wednesday night. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Wednesday's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. The lone weather note on this slate is that there is a good chance of rain in Oakland for the A's and the Mariners. The rain odds do decrease as a game goes along, so I check back on that later. That's the one game that could be a bit sketchy, and I think it's actually a little bit in risk. So we'll talk about a pitcher in that game later on and potentially a stack as well. But just keep in mind that Mariners A's could be at risk due to rain out in Oakland. We're going to break down the pitching preview and stacks and more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Our PGA DFS breakdown for the Wells Fargo Championship is now posted over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, breaking down studs, value plays, roster construction, and much more. To search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. The biggest horse race of the year is here, and there is no better time to get in on the action on FanDuel Racing, because right now, all customers can get a no-sweat derby bet up to $20. That means you'll get up to $20 back if your win bet doesn't win. The FanDuel Racing app is super easy to use, safe and secure, and when you win, you get paid fast. So don't miss out. The Derby is coming up this Saturday. Just visit racing.fanduel.com for your chance to get a no-sweat derby bet up to $20 on FanDuel Racing. That's racing.fanduel.com. Age and residency restrictions apply. Offer valid on first derby win wager. Refund issued in non-withdrawable racing site credit that expires on June 12, 2023. Restrictions apply. See terms at racing.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. If you want some thoughts on the Derby, we did talk to Christina Blacker of FanDuel TV to get her read on this year's field. She did talk about a horse she likes to win, broke down the favorite Forte as well. That's over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page later on today. Pitching preview for this Wednesday main slate. Shohei Ohtani comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel. His salary is 11-1, followed by Marcus Stroman at 10-5, Logan Gilbert 98, Shane Bieber is 96, Kyle Gibson 93, with Dylan Cease, Louis Varland, and Alek Manoah as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, this is not the world's deepest pitching slate because Shane Bieber is struggling right now. Kyle Gibson, not the highest upside guy. Stroman, not the highest upside guy. Cease in kind of a funk, which means I think we can justify just putting Shohei Ohtani at the top of our list and figure out the rest later. I do think Logan Gilbert is in his tier, as we'll discuss later on, but any night we can just, close our eyes and use Ohtani, never a bad thing. Now, this is not an easy matchup here. Ohtani is facing the Cardinals, who have a 104 WRC plus against righties. Their strikeout rate is 20%, so it is a tough spot. And it is also one of the warmer games on this slate, but Ohtani's just so good right now. Now, he did let up 3 barrels and 2 home runs last week against the A's. Those, though, were the first barrels and the first home runs he has let up all year long. It has been an insane run for Ohtani. He's been throwing more sliders and fewer splitters across his past 14 starts. So a 14-start sample, basically half a year. He has a 1.63 ERA. That's absurd. His peripherals aren't quite as good, but his skill interactive ERA is still 3.49. He leads the slate with a 31% strikeout rate in that time, and that's impressive. I think the most impressive thing about Ohtani in this 14-start sample, though, is that his hard hit rate allowed is 27%. If you look at the other guys on this slate, in their most relevant samples, nobody else is within 8 percentage points of Ohtani. So he throws off the color grading on my spreadsheet because he's been so good in that area. So Ohtani gets strikeouts. He suppresses hard contact. He's elite. We can accept that. Even in a tough matchup, Ohtani is our top pitcher of the slate for tonight. Now, with that said, I do think that Logan Gilbert is in Ohtani's tier, as mentioned. And part of that is the matchup. Ohtani facing the Cardinals, that's tough. Gilbert facing the A's, not as much. A's have a 25% strikeout rate on the current active roster against righties this year. Minimal power, so that helps. But it's not all matchup based because Gilbert does plenty himself as well. We're up to 5 starts on Gilbert with his new splitter that he has, and in that 5-start sample, 3.04 skill interactive ERA, 30% strikeout rate, and 4% walk rate. The batted ball data not on Ohtani's level, but it's not bad. And a lot of times with splitters, you can see pretty rough batted ball data. That has not been the case for Gilbert. For 7.5 outs tonight, which is actually a bit more than Ohtani. Now, the reason I have Ohtani ranked high is the batted ball data is so good that I feel like long-term, we're going to see Ohtani outperform Logan Gilbert. But Gilbert's salary is lower, better matchup. Gilbert is dealing with rain, so make sure you check back on that. I would say it's Ohtani 1A, Gilbert 1B. I don't often put guys in Ohtani's tier unless it's like Garrett Cole or whatever. So putting him in that range is a pretty big compliment to Logan Gilbert. So to me, it's Ohtani 1, Gilbert 2, nobody else really in the discussion for the top 2 pitching slots. For the value play, Dylan Cease really struggling. I used him as a pitcher last week, and that did not go very well. But his salary is down to $8,900, and I think that does open the door to use him tonight. Cease is facing the Twins, which is not a perfect matchup, but it's also not the end of the world. The Twins will strike out. They have a 24% strikeout rate against righties, and it's not as if Cease is not getting strikeouts. That's not been his issue so far this year. Strikeout rate is 26%, down from 30% last year. So it is down, but it's not awful, especially on this slate. I do think the velocity is concerning for Cease. He's down about a mile per hour across the board from last year, and it's not trending up either, which is concerning because a lot of times we can see low velocity in colder temperatures. It hasn't gotten a lot warmer. I know last week for Cease in that game against the Rays, the temperature was still low. So maybe that's why the velo is low, but it's not getting better, and that's a bit concerning for me. The numbers I cited above, though, the 26% strikeout rate are from this year with the velocity being down, and he still has a relatively high strikeout projection of 6.4. He's just letting up too many walks, too much hard contact, and that could bite him here because the Twins getting healthier, has some guys who can bang. That's definitely a concern. Cease's 6.4 projected strikeouts ranks 3rd behind Ohtani and Gilbert for tonight. It's enough for me to use him given the decreased salary. If he were, let's say, $9,800, I probably wouldn't do this. I mean, the same salary as Gilbert, I would just say, no thanks. But he's worth a shot. The Twins offense has had its ups and downs for sure. So I think Cease works at 89. Definitely okay with him. We'll also talk about one more value play in things to watch. But to me, this slate is all about Ohtani and Gilbert, in large part because I can get there. Part of the reason I can get there is because the bats that I want most at Coors Field come with low salaries. Let's talk about the stacks here for this Wednesday slate. And we talked yesterday about Coors. I wanted just one side, and that side did not do very well. The Brewers did not do much in that game. But tonight, I want both. And I think both the Rockies and the Brewers are the top 2 teams for stacking tonight. I'm going to rank the Brewers higher, so we'll discuss them first, but we'll talk about the Rockies after that. The Brewers facing Kyle Freeland, who has come back to earth after his really nice start to this year. He's led up 3+ earned runs in now 3 straight games, and one of those was on the road, so not at Coors Field. When we look at everything together, the 3 good starts with the 3 bad ones, we can stack against the profile. It's a 5.08 skill interactive ERA for Freeland, 37% hard hit rate allowed. It's about average, which is not what you want at Coors Field. You want better than average, 45% fly ball rate. So again, you take those numbers, put them at Coors Field, we can get some fireworks for sure. The Brewers are not good against lefties. They are pretty bad. A lot of strikeouts this year, a lot of strikeouts last year, but they do have some guys who can hit. So I feel good stacking them here. And I think the Brewers do grade out pretty well from that perspective. The Brewers, the big ticket option here for me is a guy who has been injured until yesterday. Tyrone Taylor came off the IL last night. Started against a righty, which says to me he's probably going to play against lefty, and I hope he gets a good spot in the order because I will go bananas if he does. Taylor, really good power. 42% fly ball rate against lefties in his career. It was 44% last year with a 200 ISO. And again, that's not at Coors. This is, looking primarily Milwaukee. If we get Taylor batting 8th at $2,500, I will use him and be happy about it. If we get Taylor batting higher in the order, which I think he probably will, I might put him in every lineup. That's kind of where I'm at with Tyrone Taylor. I'm very excited here. I like Taylor for a pretty long time because of the power, potentially to my own detriment, but I think tonight it just makes a lot of sense. So Tyrone Taylor, put him at the top of the order. Let this guy eat. I think that he makes a lot of sense and is a very good play for tonight. So Tyrone Taylor is like the guy for me on this slate. Even above Ohtani and Gilbert, I just adore him for sure. Now, the Rockies are facing Eric Lauer, also a good matchup, and I'd have a bit less faith in their offense, which is why they're lower than the Brewers, but they are in the same tier for tonight. The reason they're in the same tier, despite the fact I don't like the Rockies offense, is that Lauer is still struggling. He's been letting up tons of fly balls and hard contact this year, and it's led to a 5.19 ERA. His expected ERA at Baseball Savant is actually even higher at 6.19, and there's room for it to get worse because he has just a 7.9% swinging strike rate, so his already low strikeout rate could go down even more. If that strikeout rate does go down more, his hard contact issues would be even more concerning. The Rockies definitely off to a tough start this year, a 68 WRC plus against lefties, and we, can definitely be annoyed by that, but I would not be shocked if that number goes up in a big way for tonight. So very high in the Rockies here, do like them quite a bit. The Tyrone Taylor equivalent within this Rockies lineup is Randall Grichuk for a couple reasons. The first one is just came back, so there's that equivalent. Low salary, 27. Grichuk did not have a great rehab stint, but he has made some hard contact in his few plate appearances in the majors. He's not striking out a concerning amount yet. So with Grichuk at 27 and Taylor at 25, I think you can stack Coors Field pretty easily while using Ohtani or Gilbert, especially Gilbert. So to me, we can have our cake and eat it too. I'm very into that. So to me, I think the Rockies and Brewers, very stackable, even when you decide to go with a high salary pitcher for tonight. Outside of Coors Field, I feel like the top stack tonight has to be the Cubs. They're facing Jake Irvin, who is coming up to make his debut for the Nationals. Last year was his first year back off an elbow injury. Good to see him make it through the entire year, fully healthy, and he pitched really well in high A when he first came back. He got moved up to double A, earned a promotion there, and not a shutdown there for Irvin. He had a 4.79 ERA across 15 starts in double A. His strikeout rate is acceptable, but a lot of fly balls. That year where he was in high A and double A was his age 25 season. We saw Irvin make 5 starts in AAA this year, his age 26 season before his promotion. He has a 5.30 xFIP in AAA, strikeout rate pretty low at 20%, and it comes with a 9.4% swinging strike rate. We also saw Irvin walk too many guys down to AAA, and now he has to come up to face big league batters. And it's not just generic big league batters. The Cubs have been very good against righties so far this year with a 114 WRC plus, a 165 ISO, not that many strikeouts. I think they're probably going to give him some issues for tonight. And the bullpen and defense behind him are pretty poor. So if Irvin does okay, we can still get some points after that via the bullpen and the defense the Cubs will be facing. So Cubs are not on the level of Coors Field stacks. I think that they're definitely a tier below them, but I think they're still a really solid option here. And they do have some value plays. I know a lot of the guys here for the Cubs are high salary, but Seiya Suzuki comes with a low salary here, and he hasn't been great since he came off the IL, but he does have a 51% hard hit rate. Not a lot of strikeouts, and the strikeouts have been decreasing the further he gets removed from that IL stint. We did see Suzuki show off some power last year, was willing to run, has not done that. Well, he's run twice, but he's gotten caught both times, but he hasn't been as willing to run so far. I think he still has an upside in him. It is a bit of a leap of faith. He hasn't shown a lot so far this year, but he's $2,900. Really good stack. I think that he makes sense. If you need a one-off on this Cubs team, I think Suzuki could be a worthy consideration for that spot. Let's go to things to watch. I mentioned before there was one more value play I wanted to discuss. I did give some thought to Louis Varland for the Twins against the White Sox. He has never been a high strikeout guy, but This year, somehow, Varland is throwing gas. His fastball velocity, 96 miles per hour. It was 93.8 last year. His slider velo is up 3 miles per hour, and he's throwing that pitch a ton. So he's a very different pitcher than what he was last year when he was a low strikeout guy. He made one start in the big leagues, came against the Yankees, had a 14.5% swinging strike rate. This time, he's facing the White Sox. Pretty chilly temperatures in Chicago for today. I think he's worth considering at 85 if you want to go kind of weird. I think he's more of like a multi-entry guy. If you want to find ways to differentiate, you want to load up on Coors Field without going the full route of the Ohtani or Gilbert way. I think that Varland could be a fun way to differentiate without being fully dumb. Might be dumb, but maybe not fully dumb. We'll phrase it that way. I'm okay with the Orioles tonight. Actually, pretty okay with them. I think they're kind of in the same tier as the Cubs personally. They're facing Zach Greinke, who doesn't seem to be fully right now. A lot of hard contact this year. This is also the warmest game on the slate in Kansas City. So I like the O's quite a bit. If this were a normal slate with no Coors Field, or if both sides of Coors Field weren't as attractive as they are, the Orioles would probably be a top 3 stack. So they're in the same tier as the Cubs for me for tonight. The Mariners, viable for stacking, again, assuming that the weather winds up being okay in Oakland. They're facing JP Sears, who hasn't had great results so far this year, but this one is more about the bullpen for the A's, which might be the worst of all time. I mean, it was like 2016 or so. The Reds had like a hideous bullpen where you'd stack against them even when they had like okay starting pitchers. Sears lets up fly balls and hard contact on top of that. So this is as much about the bullpen as it is about Sears. The Mariners' salaries aren't too bad. Definitely can get behind that. I would downgrade them if Julio Rodriguez can't play, but overall, the Mariners, fine to consider for stacking for tonight. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls. I typically try not to do both at Coors Field, but I want to do both at Coors Field for today, given that there are lower temperatures elsewhere. I like the matchups for both teams. Both teams facing guys that let up a lot of fly balls and a decent amount of hard contact. So sorry, we're going both at Coors Field. The boring one is CJ Cron. Cron has been, just like his typical self. He hasn't been like outstanding or anything, but does have 6 home runs so far this year. One of those came a couple nights ago. Seems like recently been hitting the ball pretty well. So we'll go CJ Cron for the boring one. It is about as boring as can be, but it is what it is. The fun one, I got a ride with Tyrone Taylor, fresh off the IL, $2,500. Again, even if he bats 8th, I will go hard at him for tonight because I believe in the talent, like the power. $2,500, good stack. So even if he bats 8th, still in on Tyrone Taylor. If he bats higher than that, we are full on pants off and going hard at Tyrone Taylor for tonight. So home run calls are CJ Cron and Tyrone Taylor. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. As mentioned, though, if you want some PGA DFS thoughts for this week, check it out over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. If you want to check out a video version of the Solo Shot, you can find us over on the FanDuel YouTube page. Shout out to all of you watching there right now. Hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate all of you as always. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Thursday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.